They pushed her limits with increasingly personal attacks, hoping for an emotional breakdown on camera. Her response came in unexpected perfect calm, three simple words that left the studio completely silent. The grand ballroom at the Plaza Hotel sparkled with refined opulence, crystal chandeliers catching the morning light and casting prismatic patterns across immaculately dressed attendees. The annual Women's Leadership Summit had transformed this historic New York space into a gathering of influence and power, where accomplished women from politics, business, arts, and philanthropy converged in rare collective presence. But beneath the polished surface, beneath the networking and champagne, tensions simmered like hidden currents. This wasn't just a celebration. It was a carefully orchestrated performance where ideological fault lines ran beneath Louboutin heels. Diana Matthews adjusted her emerald blazer, checked her reflection in a mirrored column, and smoothed already perfect hair, her practiced smile never quite reaching calculating eyes. 12 years hosting. The Matthews Hour had made her a household name, a liberal icon feared by conservatives who entered her carefully constructed arena, where the rules always favored her position. She discreetly tapped her earpiece, signaling to her producer Jacob, who monitored preparations from a corner. Today would be different. Today would be spectacular. Today would generate the kind of moment that drove ratings, created memes, and reinforced her reputation as the journalist conservatives most feared. Her network had received confidential information that Melania Trump would make a surprise appearance at the summit, supporting a childhood literacy initiative unmentioned in public schedules, unlisted in official programs. A perfect opportunity for the ambush Matthews had built her brand upon. Jacob approached, microphone in hand, his expression professional, but his eyes revealing shared anticipation. "We're set," he confirmed. Cameras positioned for optimal coverage, 3 angles on the main entrance, 2 on the east corridor, and Stephanie stationed by the literacy booth. Matthews nodded slightly, satisfied. 3 months without a truly viral segment had left the network executives anxious, had made her position slightly precarious in the ever-shifting landscape of cable news and social media influence. Today would change that trajectory. Across the ballroom, Rebecca Chen, summit organizer and CEO of Women Forward International, watched with growing concern as Matthews and her team positioned themselves with the predatory precision she had witnessed many times before. This summit was meant to transcend partisan division, to celebrate accomplishment, to build unlikely alliances across difference, not to become the backdrop for manufactured conflict that drove engagement at the expense of genuine progress, genuine connection. She approached Matthews with practiced diplomacy. "Diana," she began, "I understand you're covering the event, but please remember this is a nonpartisan gathering. We have attendees from across the political spectrum." Matthews smiled that television smile that conveyed warmth without sincerity. "Of course, Rebecca," she assured. "We're simply documenting this important event." The words felt hollow, the intent transparent to anyone familiar with her tactics, her history, her carefully maintained brand built on confrontation, on division, on moments that reinforced tribal certainties rather than bridging difficult divides. Rebecca nodded, unconvinced but powerless against the media credentials that granted access, against the cameras already positioned, against the narrative already forming before a single word had been exchanged. Near the Literacy Foundation display, Stephanie, Matthews' associate producer, adjusted her position slightly, ensuring an optimal angle for the planned encounter. The table was arranged with children's books, pamphlets, and sign-up sheets for the initiative Melania still supported years after leaving the White House, making this the perfect backdrop for the confrontation Matthews had designed to generate clips, shares, and comments across platforms, all driving traffic to a network struggling with decreased relevance in the digital age. Summit attendees continued arriving, women in tailored suits and elegant dresses, their achievements evident in their bearing, their connections, their confident navigation of a space designed for networking, for influence, for the careful calibration of professional relationships. Most were unaware of the drama about to unfold, the performance already in rehearsal before the main character had even arrived. Jacob returned to Matthew's side, checking camera positions one final time. Her questions, her strategy, her approach, all meticulously planned for maximum impact, for optimal viral potential, for the creation of content that would drive engagement, disguised as journalism, disguised as inquiry, but designed purely for conflict. "Diana," he said, keeping his voice low, "security just confirmed her car is approaching. 3 minutes out. Executive entrance." Matthews nodded, touching her hair once more. A gesture of preparation, of readiness for the performance about to begin, for the confrontation carefully orchestrated to generate precisely the reaction her audience craved, her brand required, her career increasingly demanded in an era of declining viewership, of fractured media landscapes, of desperate competition for diminishing attention. Across the ballroom, conversations continued. Summit attendees discussing initiatives, sharing contacts, planning collaborations, entirely unaware of the spectacle about to unfold in a space intended for professional connection, for substantive exchange, for the celebration of accomplishment across ideological division, across difference. The executive entrance doors opened slightly, security personnel communicating through earpieces, making final preparations for an arrival unannounced but anticipated by those who tracked such movements, who monitored the comings and goings of figures still commanding public fascination, still generating clicks, still creating the currency of contemporary media. Matthews moved toward position, her cameraman following discreetly, her producer signaling final adjustments, to lighting, to angles, to the precise choreography of manufactured controversy, of ambush disguised as encounter, of provocation presented as interview. Rebecca watched with growing unease, with recognition of what was unfolding, with the helpless frustration of hosting an event about to be transformed into the backdrop for conflict, into the setting for the creation of viral content at the expense of substance, at the expense of the very purpose that had gathered these accomplished women in shared space. And then she arrived. Melania Trump stepped into the ballroom, her entrance causing a subtle ripple through the assembled crowd, through an atmosphere previously charged, now transformed by a presence still commanding attention, still generating fascination, still creating the indefinable energy of genuine celebrity in an era of manufactured influence. She moved with practiced grace, with the poise developed through years of public scrutiny, of global attention, of navigation through spaces where her every gesture, her every expression, her every word was analyzed, dissected, interpreted beyond intention, beyond context, beyond control. Matthews watched, calculated, observed, noting the conservative blue dress, the perfect makeup, the composed demeanor that revealed nothing of inner thoughts, of awareness, of preparation for the ambush already in motion, already unfolding, already designed to create precisely the kind of moment her career required, her reputation demanded, her network expected. Jacob's voice whispered in her earpiece, "Perfect. She's heading toward the literacy display. Exactly as predicted, exactly as planned. The trap was already set, the confrontation already choreographed, the provocation already scripted for maximum impact, for optimal viral potential, for content that would generate engagement across platforms." Matthews moved now with purpose, with the practiced precision of a predator approaching unsuspecting prey, with confidence built through dozens of similar ambushes, similar provocations, similar manufactured moments that had built her brand, her reputation, her position in a media ecosystem, increasingly dependent on conflict, increasingly driven by division, increasingly measured by capacity to generate reaction. But what Matthews didn't know, what her producer couldn't anticipate, what her network hadn't considered in their careful planning, their meticulous preparation, their strategic positioning, was that Melania Trump had navigated far more treacherous encounters, had survived far more hostile environments, had developed, through years of global scrutiny, resources completely invisible to those who saw only the surface, who perceived only the carefully maintained exterior, who recognized only what they had been conditioned to see, only what confirmed the existing narrative, only what reinforced comfortable certainty about who she was, what she represented, what she might reveal under pressure. The stage was set, the cameras positioned, the trap prepared, but the performance about to unfold would follow no script, would conform to no expectation, would generate content entirely different from anything Diana Matthews had planned, had anticipated, had designed in her careful orchestration of predictable controversy. Melania moved through the ballroom with practiced elegance and quiet poise, acknowledging greetings with slight nods, brief smiles, and polite exchanges, never lingering, never revealing more than necessary in a space where every interaction carried potential for misinterpretation. Diana Matthews observed from a distance, calculating her approach, identifying the moment of optimal vulnerability, when her target would be most exposed, most unprepared for the confrontation she had planned. Her cameraman, Daniel, positioned himself with practiced invisibility, ensuring perfect framing for whatever unfolded, ensuring Matthews would appear reasonable even as her questions grew increasingly hostile. It was a choreography they had performed dozens of times with different targets, different settings, different controversies, but always the same outcome: the creation of content from conflict. Jacob's voice continued in her earpiece, providing updates and guidance on the specific angles the network wanted, the responses they needed, the reactions that would generate optimal engagement. "She's heading toward the literacy display," he said. "Perfect, exactly as anticipated." Matthews nodded imperceptibly. 12 years of manufacturing confrontation had given her an instinct for timing, for the precise moment when an ambush would yield the greatest impact, the most valuable content, the strongest audience reaction. Across the ballroom, Rebecca Chen watched with growing concern as Matthews and her team maneuvered with the precision of hunters tracking prey through crowded terrain. She caught the eye of security, subtly signaling awareness of a potential disruption, but uncertain what intervention might be possible against press credentials and rolling cameras, which were already transforming a private event into a public spectacle before the confrontation had even begun. Melania reached the literacy display, her expression softening slightly as she examined the books, titles she had selected, initiatives she had supported, causes connected to childhood development and educational access, fundamental tools of opportunity that transcended political division. Stephanie approached, clipboard in hand, professional smile masking predatory purpose. "Ms. Trump," she began, "would you mind if we asked a few questions about the literacy initiative you're supporting?" Her voice was pleasant, her demeanor courteous, nothing suggesting the ambush being coordinated, the trap being laid, the provocation planned. Melania nodded, a slight smile acknowledging the expected press interaction, anticipating questions about the initiative, the foundation, the substantive work continuing beyond her White House years. Matthews received the silent signal from Stephanie and moved into position, microphone ready, camera already rolling, capturing the approach, the setup, the carefully staged encounter designed to appear spontaneous, to conceal calculated provocation beneath the veneer of professional inquiry. Jacob's voice was urgent in her earpiece now. "Perfect positioning, perfect timing. Make sure to establish a friendly connection before pivoting to the real questions." The guidance was unnecessary but typical of producer anxiety, of network investment in creating specific content, generating specific reactions, achieving specific outcomes from interactions manufactured precisely for maximum impact. A small crowd had gathered around the display, summit attendees genuinely interested in the literacy initiative, in the foundation's work, in the programs being developed. But this also created an unexpected audience for the confrontation, witnesses to the provocation, observers for the spectacle about to unfold. Matthews approached, microphone extended, camera following at the perfect distance, her expression shifting into a practiced smile that suggested journalistic interest, implied professional courtesy, and concealed predatory intention. "Ms. Trump," she called, voice carrying just enough volume to establish presence, just enough projection to command attention, just enough authority to create an expectation of engagement. "Diana Matthews," she added, "from the Matthews Hour. Might I have just a moment of your time regarding your literacy initiative?" Melania turned, slight smile, genuine politeness. "Of course," she replied, her voice soft, accented, accepting the expected media interaction, unaware of the trap being laid, the provocation being prepared, the calculated performance designed to generate a specific reaction, a specific viral moment at her expense. The surrounding attendees shifted, creating space for the interview, an audience for the exchange, witnesses for an interaction that Matthews intended to transform into something entirely different from a substantive discussion. She began with expected questions about the literacy program, the foundation's partnerships, creating the appearance of a legitimate interview, the pretense of journalistic interest, the foundation for the pivot to come. Melania responded with measured detail, with genuine knowledge, with clear commitment to the programs she had developed beyond politics, beyond the partisan framework that typically characterized media representation of her work. Matthews nodded, appearing engaged, appearing interested, while waiting for the perfect moment to shift, to transform the exchange into confrontation. Jacob's voice returned in her earpiece, guiding the transition, confirming the network's expectations, the content required, the specific provocation needed to generate the viral moment, the shareable clip. Matthews shifted stance slightly, microphone still extended, still recording, capturing every word, every potential reaction that might generate engagement. "So tell me, Ms. Trump," she said, voice shifting, tone hardening, "how do you reconcile your work on children's literacy with your husband's administration and policies that separated immigrant children from parents, many who still remain traumatized today?" The pivot was abrupt, deliberate, calculated for maximum contrast, designed to generate an immediate reaction. The surrounding crowd tensed, recognizing the ambush, the trap, the transformation of policy discussion into personal attack, of substantive exchange into political provocation. Melania's expression remained unchanged, her composure undisturbed, her poise maintained. Years of navigating hostile media had prepared her for such moments. "I believe," she began, voice still measured, "that literacy initiatives benefit all children, regardless of background or circumstance, which is precisely why—" "But your famous jacket said, 'I don't really care,' while visiting detained children," Matthews interrupted. "Seems contradictory to claim concern now, doesn't it?" The provocation was explicit now, the intent clear to everyone watching, to corner, to trap, to force either anger or defensiveness, either reaction creating the viral clip her network demanded. Rebecca moved closer, concerned by the explicit violation of summit guidelines, by the transformation of a professional event into a backdrop for manufactured conflict. Daniel zoomed in tighter, capturing what Matthews expected to be a revealing reaction, a usable response, footage transformable into content. But what Matthews failed to recognize, what Jacob couldn't anticipate, what the network hadn't considered, was that Melania had navigated far more treacherous terrain, encountered far more skilled provocateurs. Years of global scrutiny had given her resources invisible to those who saw only the surface. And as Matthews prepared her next provocation, as the camera zoomed tighter, as the producer continued guiding through the earpiece, something unexpected was about to unfold, something that would reshape the encounter, the planned provocation, the manufactured moment into something beyond Matthews' control, beyond the network's expectations, beyond the algorithm's prediction of engagement in ways no one could anticipate. Matthews pressed forward aggressively now, her practiced smile abandoned, replaced by an expression of righteous indignation. Her trademark, the foundation of her reputation, the brand she had built as a liberal voice of accountability, demanding answers from conservative figures. "I think people deserve to know," she continued, "how you reconcile your current philanthropy with policies that cause documented trauma to immigrant children, some still separated from their parents years after the administration ended." The accusation was explicit now, the provocation undisguised, the intent transparent, to create a reaction, to generate content, to manufacture a viral moment at her subject's expense. Melania remained composed, her posture unchanged, her expression revealing nothing of an internal response to the deliberate provocation, the calculated attempt at crafting usable footage, an exploitable reaction transformable into content beyond her control. "I've always advocated," she began, "for children's welfare regardless of background, which is precisely why literacy—" Matthews interrupted, more forcefully now. "But actions speak louder than words, don't they? And your husband's administration's actions spoke volumes about priorities, about values, about who deserves compassion and who doesn't in your worldview." The attack was direct now, personal, confrontational, designed specifically to breach composure, to penetrate poise, to generate a visible reaction that cameras could capture, that editing could enhance, that promotion could transform into viral content, into a shareable moment, into measurable engagement across platforms. Daniel zoomed tighter, focusing entirely on Melania's face, capturing every micro-expression, every subtle reaction, every potential footage usable in creating the narrative already written, the conclusion already determined, the content conceptualized before the exchange had even occurred, before the subject had even responded, before the provocation had even generated the intended reaction. Jacob's voice came through Matthew's earpiece. "Perfect. Keep pushing. We're getting close. Her composure is cracking. We almost have it." The guidance was unnecessary, but typical of producer anxiety, of network investment in a specific outcome, a specific piece of content, a specific reaction that algorithms predicted would generate optimal engagement. The surrounding crowd had grown larger, summit attendees drawn by the confrontation, the spectacle, the unmistakable energy of manufactured conflict unfolding in a space intended for professional exchange, for substantive discussion, for connections across political division. Rebecca stepped closer now, prepared to intervene, to end the inappropriate exchange, to protect the integrity of the summit from transformation into a backdrop for media spectacle, a setting for provocative performance, a platform for manufactured controversy at the expense of substantive engagement. "Ms. Matthews," she began, her voice firm, "this summit has guidelines about respectful dialogue, about professional exchange, about—" Matthews turned briefly, irritation flashing across her face at the interruption, at the interference, at the potential disruption of a carefully orchestrated moment designed to generate specific content. "We're conducting a legitimate interview," she responded sharply, "about matters of public interest, about accountability, about questions viewers deserve answers to." The justification was hollow, the intent transparent, to everyone present, to everyone watching, to everyone witnessing the calculated attempt at manufacturing controversial content at the subject's expense, at the event's expense, at the expense of genuine discourse. She turned back to Melania, microphone extended, camera still recording, still focusing, still capturing every moment, every reaction, every potential usable footage in creating content, in generating engagement, in producing the viral moment her career increasingly required, her brand increasingly demanded, her network increasingly expected. "Let's discuss your modeling career," she continued, pivoting to a new line of attack, a fresh provocation, a different angle for generating a reaction. "Your nude photo shoots seem in stark contrast to the conservative family values you now promote. How do you explain this contradiction to young women you claim to inspire?" The question was deliberately provocative, explicitly personal, obviously intended to offend, to provoke, to generate a visible reaction, exploitable in a media context, transformable into content, shareable across platforms, measurable in engagement, quantifiable in the metrics determining success in the digital landscape. The surrounding crowd reacted immediately, murmurs of disapproval, expressions of shock at the inappropriate question, at the deliberate violation of professional boundaries, at the explicit attempt to provoke an emotional response through personal attack, through intentional disrespect, through calculated offense. Daniel panned briefly, capturing the crowd's reaction before returning to Melania's face, to the subject's expression, to the potential reaction that would generate the content the network demanded, the footage the producers required, the moment the host's career increasingly necessitated in a competitive media environment, in algorithm-driven engagement metrics, in the attention economy. But Melania's composure remained unbroken, her expression unchanged, her poise maintained through the deliberate provocation, through the calculated disrespect, through the transparent attempt at manufacturing a reaction, at generating content, at creating a viral moment at her expense. The control was evident in her response, in her posture, in her continued refusal to perform the expected role in the spectacle designed to transform her into content. "I believe," she began again, her voice steady, "in focusing on substantive work, on actual impact, on measurable outcomes rather than—" Matthews interrupted again, her voice harder now. "Your silence during controversial policies, your apparent disinterest in public engagement, suggests indifference to responsibilities one might expect from your position. Don't you think Americans deserved more than performative appearances? carefully staged photo opportunities, shallow platitudes while actual damage was being done, to democratic institutions, to vulnerable populations, to the very values this country claims to uphold. The monologue was practiced, rehearsed, designed specifically to breach composure, to penetrate control, to generate a visible emotional response that cameras could capture, that editing could enhance, that promotion could transform into viral content, into measurable engagement, into professional currency in a media landscape increasingly dependent on conflict, on reaction, on controversy rather than substance. Jacob's voice returned through the earpiece. Escalate further, personal angle, family angle, anything to break through, anything to generate usable footage, shareable content, a viral moment. We need this. We're committed to this angle for tonight's broadcast, for social platforms, for promotional materials already prepared, already designed, already waiting for footage to complete the narrative already constructed. Matthews nodded imperceptibly, agreement with the direction, with the strategy, with the approach that had built her career, had established her brand, had created her professional identity as a provocateur, as a confrontational voice, as a manufacturer of viral moments through deliberate provocation, calculated offense, strategic disrespect of targeted subjects. Some summit attendees began recording on their phones, capturing the inappropriate exchange, documenting the deliberate provocation, witnessing the manufactured spectacle unfolding in a space intended for professional connection, for substantive dialogue, for meaningful exchange across political division, across difference, across the constructed barriers of contemporary discourse. Matthews leaned closer, microphone extended, camera still recording, still focusing, still capturing every moment, every reaction, every potential usable footage in pursuit of content. "And let's discuss your accent," she said, her voice dripping with condescension, with deliberate disrespect, with calculated provocation. Many find it curious that someone representing American values in such a visible position could barely communicate in English. Do you think your background, your history, your obvious foreignness undermined your capacity to connect with the American public, to represent American interests, to embody American values in a role you clearly weren't prepared for? The xenophobia was explicit now, undisguised, the provocation reaching a new level of personal attack, of deliberate offense, of a calculated attempt to breach composure through targeted insult, through specific provocation, through strategic disrespect, designed precisely to generate an emotional response, to create usable footage, to manufacture a viral moment. Gasps were audible now from the surrounding crowd, expressions of shock visible on the faces of summit attendees, witnessing the deliberate violation of professional boundaries, of basic courtesy, of fundamental respect in pursuit of manufactured controversy, in service of content creation, in the production of spectacle at the subject's expense, at the event's expense, at discourse's expense. Rebecca moved forward, determined now to end the inappropriate exchange, to protect the integrity of the summit from transformation into a platform for manufactured controversy, into a backdrop for a provocative performance, into a setting for deliberate disrespect. Security personnel shifted position, prepared to intervene, to remove Matthews and her crew, to end the inappropriate provocation clearly violating event guidelines, clearly breaching professional boundaries, clearly intended to generate reaction rather than substance. Daniel zoomed tighter still, capturing what Matthews expected would be the breaking point, the moment of emotional response, the reaction transformable into viral content, into a shareable moment, into measurable engagement across platforms, across demographics, across the metrics determining success in the contemporary media landscape. But what happened next would transform not just the exchange, not just the event, not just the expected narrative, but Matthews' career, her reputation, her understanding of engagement, of content, of the very metrics determining success, failure, and relevance in the contemporary media landscape in unexpected ways no one could anticipate, no one could prepare for, no one could integrate into their existing framework of understanding, of expectation, of certainty about what provocation generated, about what manufactured controversy ultimately yielded when a subject refused to perform the expected role in the carefully orchestrated spectacle of conflict creation. In the crystalline silence that followed, Melania Trump did something unexpected, something neither Matthews nor her producer nor the watching crowd could have anticipated. She smiled, not the practiced smile of a public figure, not the polite smile of forced tolerance, not the defensive smile of wounded dignity, but something entirely different, something genuine, something that suggested not offense, not anger, but almost amusement at the transparent attempt at provoking a reaction, at generating content, at manufacturing a viral moment at her expense. "I understand your approach, Ms. Matthews," she began, voice clear, accent present but elegant, "and I appreciate the opportunity to address these interesting perspectives." The response, measured, controlled, unexpected, in the face of deliberate provocation, in the context of calculated disrespect, in an environment of manufactured controversy designed specifically to generate emotional reaction, to create exploitable footage, to produce viral content. Matthews leaned forward, sensing potential for a different kind of engagement, a different angle, a different approach to generating a reaction that might still yield usable footage. "What do you mean by my approach?" she asked, tone still aggressive, still confrontational, still seeking provocation, still pursuing emotional response, still attempting to create the content her network demanded, the footage her producers required, the moment her career increasingly necessitated in the contemporary media landscape, in the attention economy, in algorithm-driven engagement metrics. But before she could press further, before she could escalate again, before she could launch a new provocation, attempt a new angle, try a different approach to generating reaction, Melania continued speaking, but something had changed, something had shifted, something had transformed in her presence, in her voice, in the very energy she projected into space previously charged with manufactured tension. "Je comprends parfaitement pourquoi vous posez ces questions," she continued in flawless French, her accent shifting, her cadence changing, her entire presence transforming before the stunned audience, before the shocked Matthews, before the camera capturing something entirely unexpected, entirely unprecedented, entirely beyond the prepared narrative, beyond the planned provocation, beyond the anticipated réaction. La politique est compliquée, et les médias simplifient souvent des situations nuancées pour créer de la controverse. Where American policies toward immigration are concerned, there are complex legal and humanitarian considerations that deserve thoughtful discussion, not reductive framing for media consumption. She seamlessly transitioned back to English, then shifted again without pause, without hesitation. Когда дело касается моделирования и личного прошлого, she continued in perfect Russian, voice melodic, authority evident, command complete, transformation visible as she spoke the language of her education, the language of her early career, the language revealing depth entirely invisible to those who perceived only accent, only limitation, only barrier, rather than multilingual fluency, rather than global perspective, rather than linguistic capacity beyond monolingual understanding of communication. «Я горжусь своей карьерой и тем путем, который привел меня сюда». Matthews stood frozen, microphone still extended, but expression completely transformed from aggressive confidence to stunned disbelief, to visible disorientation, as the subject of planned provocation, of calculated disrespect, of a transparent attempt at generating exploitable reaction, suddenly revealed dimensions entirely unexpected, entirely beyond the prepared narrative, entirely outside the framework of understanding that had informed her approach, her strategy, her provocation designed to create specific content, specific reaction, a specific viral moment now dissolving before her. Jacob's voice panicked in her earpiece. "What's happening? What language is that? What's she saying? We need translation. We need context. We need to understand what's being captured, what's being recorded, what's being documented in footage. Suddenly incomprehensible, suddenly uncontrolled, suddenly beyond network capacity to integrate into the planned narrative, into expected content, into the anticipated viral moment already promoted, already scheduled, already conceptualized before the exchange had even occurred." Daniel panned the camera wider, capturing Matthew's shocked expression, capturing the crowd's amazed reaction, capturing the transformation of manufactured controversy into something entirely different, entirely unexpected, entirely beyond the producer's direction, beyond the host's control, beyond the network's capacity to integrate into the existing framework of understanding, of expectation, of content creation. Melania shifted again without pause. Y en cuanto a mi acento, she continued in flawless Spanish, rhythm changing, melody transforming, presence still commanding, still controlled, still completely composed as she demonstrated linguistic capacity that shattered assumptions, that revealed complexity entirely invisible to those who perceived only limitation, only difference, only barrier rather than multilingual fluency, rather than global perspective, rather than cognitive complexity beyond the monolingual frame. El multilingüismo es una ventaja, no una limitación. Como muchos inmigrantes en este país, hablo varios idiomas con fluidez. The surrounding crowd completely transformed now, from witnesses to spectacle to participants in an unprecedented moment, in an extraordinary demonstration, in a revelatory performance that transcended manufactured controversy, that elevated beyond a provocative interview, that transformed beyond a calculated attempt at generating viral content into something genuine, into something authentic, into something revealing truth beyond narrative. Summit attendees watched transfixed as Melania continued speaking, shifting effortlessly between languages, demonstrating fluency in Italian, in German, in Slovenian, each transition seamless, each performance flawless, each moment further shattering assumptions, further revealing dimensions entirely invisible to those who perceived only surface, only accent, only difference rather than depth, rather than complexity, rather than cognitive linguistic capacity beyond monolingual understanding of communication, of expression, of intelligence itself. Κι όσον αφορά την αμερικανική ταυτότητα, she continued in Greek, voice melodic, presence commanding, room completely transformed, energy entirely shifted as the performance unfolded, as the demonstration continued, as the revelation expanded beyond anything Matthews had anticipated, had prepared for, had integrated into her understanding of potential outcomes of planned provocation. Η Αμερική είναι ένα έθνος μεταναστών και η δύναμή της έγκυται στην ποικιλομορφία της. Matthews stood paralyzed, microphone still extended, but purpose forgotten, intention dissolved, strategy completely undermined as the subject revealed dimensions entirely unexpected, entirely unpredicted, entirely beyond the framework of understanding that had informed her approach, her tactics, her provocation designed to create specific reaction, specific content, specific narrative now impossible to maintain, now impossible to construct, now impossible to integrate into the planned broadcast. Rebecca watched amazed as Melania continued, demonstrating linguistic fluency, demonstrating global perspective, demonstrating intellectual capacity entirely invisible to those who perceived only accent, only limitation, only barrier rather than multilingual competence, rather than international sophistication, rather than cognitive complexity beyond reductive understanding. Security personnel stood down, intervention no longer necessary, protection no longer required as manufactured controversy transformed into an authentic moment, as a provocative interview evolved into an extraordinary demonstration, as a calculated attempt at generating viral content became something entirely different, entirely unexpected, entirely beyond the producer's control, beyond the host's direction, beyond the network's capacity to integrate into the existing framework of broadcasting. After demonstrating fluency in 7 languages, Melania returned finally to English, voice clear, accent present, but now revealing a different dimension, a different understanding, a different perspective to everyone watching, to everyone listening, to everyone witnessing an unprecedented response to deliberate provocation, to calculated disrespect, to a transparent attempt at manufacturing controversy now completely transformed by unexpected revelation. Perhaps, Ms. Matthews, she concluded, looking directly at the host still frozen, still stunned, still attempting to process what had just occurred, what had just unfolded, what had just transformed manufactured controversy into an authentic moment. We should remember that accents aren't barriers to communication or understanding. They're simply evidence of stories, of journeys, of perspectives that extend beyond a single culture, beyond a single language, beyond a single viewpoint, the kind of perspectives America was built upon, the kind of diversity America still needs, the kind of global understanding that enriches rather than diminishes our collective conversation. The words delivered without anger, without defensiveness, without the emotional reaction that Matthews had attempted to provoke, had attempted to generate, had attempted to capture for transformation into viral content, into usable footage, into measurable engagement across platforms. But what had occurred instead, what had unfolded instead, what had manifested instead, transcended manufactured controversy, transcended a provocative interview, transcended a calculated attempt at creating exploitable content at the subject's expense. Daniel captured it all, camera steady, documenting transformation, documenting revelation, documenting an unprecedented demonstration that would indeed generate engagement, would indeed create a viral moment, would indeed produce measurable impact across platforms, but entirely different, entirely unexpected, entirely beyond the producer's direction, beyond the host's control, beyond the network's capacity to integrate into the existing framework of understanding, of expectation, of content creation. The ballroom felt different now, transformed by something authentic that had broken through the carefully constructed performance of provocative journalism. Matthews stood unnaturally still, her usual confidence completely shattered as the implications of what had just occurred continued unfolding, reshaping everything about the encounter, her approach, and the very premise informing her strategy. Tactics designed to create specific content now impossible to integrate into the planned narrative, the expected broadcast, the anticipated viral moment. Jacob's voice was gone silent in her earpiece, the producer speechless, the director paralyzed, the entire media apparatus suddenly confronting a reality entirely unexpected, entirely beyond their framework of understanding, revealing their preparation and strategy as obsolete, inadequate, and fundamentally flawed in their assumptions and expectations. Melania remained composed, her posture perfect, her expression revealing neither triumph nor satisfaction, but simply authenticity, presence and reality beyond performance, beyond the artificial constructs of manufactured controversy, beyond the hollow architecture of provocative journalism designed to generate engagement through conflict and exploitation. The summit attendees erupted in spontaneous applause, not polite, not obligatory, not performative, but genuine, amazed, transformed by the revelation, the demonstration of linguistic virtuosity, revealing dimensions entirely invisible to those who had perceived only accent, only limitation, only barrier rather than fluency, global perspective, and cognitive complexity beyond a monolingual frame. Daniel continued filming, documenting transformation, revelation, and unprecedented demonstration that would indeed generate engagement, would indeed create a viral moment, but in a way entirely different, entirely unexpected, entirely beyond the producer's direction. The host's control, the network's capacity to predict, contain, or shape into a predetermined narrative already conceptualized before the exchange had even occurred. Several summit attendees approached Melania, speaking various languages, engaging in a shared linguistic space suddenly opened, suddenly revealed, suddenly demonstrating the value of transcending artificial constraints of discourse previously limited, previously narrow, previously confined to a monolingual framework. Rebecca watched, emotions conflicted, professional concern about the disruption and spectacle balanced against undeniable appreciation for an extraordinary demonstration, a revelatory performance, an authentic response to deliberate provocation that had transcended manufactured controversy, elevated beyond a provocative interview, transformed beyond a calculated attempt at generating exploitable content at the subject's expense. Matthews finally lowered her microphone, her arm dropping like the physical manifestation of a collapsed strategy, a dissolved purpose, a defeated intention. As reality continued expanding, continued unfolding, continued revealing dimensions entirely unexpected, entirely unprecedented, entirely beyond her capacity to integrate into an existing framework of performance, provocation, and controversy manufacturing that had built her career, established her brand, created her professional identity. now threatened, now undermined, now revealed as fundamentally inadequate in the face of an authentic response to calculated disrespect, a transparent attempt at exploiting the subject for engagement. Melania spoke quietly now to approaching attendees, responding to comments, to questions, to expressions of admiration for her linguistic fluency. Her composed response, her extraordinary demonstration that had transformed a provocative interview into an authentic moment, into a revelatory performance, into something that transcended manufactured controversy beyond the producer's control, beyond the host's direction, beyond the network's capacity to integrate into their narrative. Jacob appeared from the control position, approaching Matthews, his expression revealing professional panic, career concern, network anxiety about footage, about broadcast plans, about content entirely different from what had been planned, entirely divergent from what was expected, entirely transformed from the anticipated viral moment that had already been conceptualized, promoted, and integrated into programming, now requiring complete reconceptualization, complete reframing, complete reimagining to salvage, to utilize, to transform into something usable, something broadcastable, something measurable in engagement. "What do we do?" he whispered urgently. "We're committed to the segment tonight. Promotions are already out, teasers already running, the structure already planned for content entirely different from what was captured, entirely divergent from what was recorded, entirely transformed from the anticipated footage." Matthews remained silent, her professional identity, career trajectory, and brand reputation suddenly confronting an existential challenge, suddenly facing fundamental questioning, suddenly encountering a reality beyond performance, beyond provocation, beyond the artificial constructs of controversy manufacturing that had previously defined her approach, her tactics, her strategy in pursuit of engagement. Several summit attendees now recorded on their phones, capturing the transformed moment, documenting the revelatory performance, sharing across platforms, already generating response, already creating engagement, already producing viral spread of footage that was entirely different from what had been anticipated, entirely divergent from what had been planned, entirely transformed from the expected content that had been previously conceptualized, previously promoted, previously integrated into network programming. Rebecca approached Melania with newfound respect, with genuine appreciation, with professional recognition of an extraordinary demonstration, a composed response, an authentic engagement that had transcended manufactured controversy, beyond provocation, beyond exploitation, beyond the artificial constraints of discourse previously limited, previously narrow, previously confined to a reductive framework of exchange. "Thank you," she said softly, "for elevating our summit beyond spectacle, beyond controversy, beyond the limited understanding that informs too much of our contemporary discourse." Melania nodded, offering a slight, genuine smile, an authentic exchange transcending artificial constructs of performative interaction, of manufactured controversy, of provocative journalism designed to generate reaction and engagement metrics across platforms, across demographics, across an attention economy increasingly dependent on conflict, increasingly driven by provocation, increasingly measured by the capacity to transform a person into content. Matthews watched, paralyzed, as the moment continued unfolding, as the implications continued expanding, as reality continued revealing dimensions entirely unexpected, entirely unprecedented, entirely beyond the framework of understanding that had informed her career, had built her brand, had established her professional identity. Now threatened, now undermined, now revealed as fundamentally inadequate in the face of an authentic response to manufactured controversy. Daniel continued filming, though the purpose had transformed, the intention had shifted, the understanding had fundamentally altered regarding what was being captured, what was being documented, what was being created in terms of content, in terms of footage, in terms of material that would generate engagement, produce response, create impact across platforms, across demographics, across the metrics determining success in the contemporary media landscape, in ways no algorithm could predict, no producer could control, no host could integrate into an existing framework of performance. Jacob touched Matthew's arm, gesturing toward the exit, signaling retreat, a strategic withdrawal, a professional necessity to regroup, to reconceptualize, to reimagine their approach to the footage, to the content, to the material now entirely different from what was planned, entirely divergent from what was expected, entirely transformed from the anticipated viral moment, previously conceptualized, previously promoted, previously integrated into programming, now requiring complete reconceptualization. Matthews nodded mechanically, her professional instinct for self-preservation, career protection, and brand maintenance still functioning, still operating, still directing her physical movement, her presence, her engagement, with an environment that had been completely transformed, fundamentally altered, entirely recontextualized by an authentic response to deliberate provocation. As they moved toward the exit, Daniel followed, his camera still recording, still documenting, still capturing a transformed reality, a transformed exchange, a transformed moment entirely different from what was anticipated, entirely divergent from what was planned, entirely unexpected in its implications, its dimensions, its potential impact across platforms, across demographics, across the metrics determining success in an attention economy. The summit continued unfolding around Melania. Attendees engaged in genuine conversation, in authentic exchange, in meaningful interaction that transcended manufactured controversy, transcended the provocative interview, transcended the calculated attempt at generating exploitable content at the subject's expense, now transformed into something genuine, into something valuable, into something revealing a truth beyond narrative, beyond the artificial constructs of controversy manufacturing, beyond the hollow architecture of provocative journalism designed to generate engagement through conflict, through reaction, through the exploitation of a subject, through the transformation of a person into content, into measurable metrics, into professional currency in an attention economy increasingly dependent on conflict, increasingly driven by provocation, increasingly measured by the capacity to create viral moments through deliberate disrespect, through calculated offense, through strategic provocation, now revealed as fundamentally inadequate in the face of an authentic response to manufactured controversy. Beyond the ballroom walls, beyond the crystal chandeliers and marble floors, something extraordinary was happening across digital landscapes and living rooms, as screens lit up with unexpected revelation. The moment Melania responded in multiple languages when linguistic virtuosity shattered assumptions, had escaped the confines of the Plaza Hotel to spiral outward with unprecedented speed. Sophia Chen, social media director for Matthews Network, stared at her monitors, watching metrics explode beyond anything she had seen in 8 years of digital media. "This isn't what we expected," she whispered to her assistant, who nodded wide-eyed as viewership numbers, comments, and shares flowed faster than their systems could track. Watch Melania Trump respond to xenophobic attack in 7 languages, posted at Media Truth with a 3-minute clip that had already reached 4 million views in 42 minutes. "I don't share her politics, but damn, the multilingual takedown was legendary," wrote a prominent liberal commentator, his share generating a cascade of conversation across political divides, across cultural boundaries that normally remained firmly entrenched. In living rooms across America, viewers who had tuned in expecting the familiar satisfaction of controversial takedown, the rehearsed outrage, the manufactured conflict that characterized contemporary media, found themselves instead leaning forward, phones in hand, recording, sharing, responding to something that transcended the usual divisions. 36-year-old Maria Rodriguez, a language professor at Columbia University, texted the clip to her entire department with a message that transcended academic division. "Linguistic brilliance has no political party." In network executive offices, emergency meetings convened as the senior leadership struggled to process what was unfolding on their screens, on platforms across the country, across the world. "This is a complete disaster," said the programming director, his voice revealing a mixture of panic and confusion, as the content they had commissioned, the confrontation they had planned, transformed into something entirely different, with implications entirely unexpected. But these engagement numbers are unprecedented, countered the digital director, showing metrics that defied expectation, that contradicted everything they thought they knew about what audiences wanted, what drove viewership, what created connection in digital media. In college dorms, in office break rooms, in airports and restaurants, wherever screens displayed the unfolding exchange, unusual crowds gathered, watching not with partisan division, not with cultural sorting that normally characterized content consumption, but with shared fascination, shared amazement, shared recognition that something extraordinary had broken through the familiar performance of provocative journalism, of manufactured controversy. Conservative media, which had prepared outraged responses to expected disrespect, scrambled to adjust their coverage as the narrative slipped beyond the familiar patterns of cultural combat. "This is what immigrant excellence looks like," wrote one outlet, sharing the unedited exchange rather than fragmenting it to fit a predetermined narrative to reinforce existing beliefs, existing divisions. Liberal publications, normally dismissive of everything associated with the Trump name, found themselves in unfamiliar territory, acknowledging the multilingual brilliance, the composed response, the sophisticated display that transcended the divisions they normally emphasized in pursuit of engagement, in pursuit of clicks. "A linguistic tour de force," read an unexpected headline from a progressive academic site, as the boundaries between media ecosystems, normally strictly enforced, suddenly blurred in an unprecedented moment of shared appreciation. Thomas Wilson, Matthew's executive producer, who had approved the ambush strategy, watched from his office with growing unease, his phone exploding with messages, with observations about the transformation they were witnessing. 12 years they had perfected the approach: provocation, reaction, viral spread, giving audiences exactly what they assumed was wanted: confirmation of conflict, reinforcement of division, emotional satisfaction of controversial takedown. And in one unplanned, authentic moment, Melania Trump had revealed the emptiness, the shallowness, the ultimate futility of that entire approach, of that entire formula, now generating engagement metrics beyond expectation, but with implications beyond prediction, with consequences beyond control, with impact beyond integration into the existing framework of understanding, of performance, of content creation. In network headquarters, executives watched the real-time metrics with stunned disbelief as viewership climbed dramatically mid-broadcast, reaching demographics they never attracted, holding attention they never sustained, generating responses they never inspired, with content they never intended to create, with implications they couldn't predict, with consequences they couldn't control. Social media moderators struggled to keep pace with comment sections, normally toxic wastelands of partisan sniping, suddenly filled with multilingual responses, with genuine questions, with honest reflections, with something approaching actual dialogue across normally unbridgeable divides. Linguistics professors across the country recorded the segment for their students as an illustration of code switching, of multilingual fluency, of cognitive benefits language acquisition provides, beyond monolingual limitation, beyond accent perception, beyond the reductive understanding and forming assumptions about intelligence, about sophistication, about capacity transcending linguistic barriers. 3 major language learning applications immediately reported subscription surges as viewers, inspired by the demonstration, motivated by revelation, energized by performance, sought to expand linguistic horizons, sought to develop capacities, sought to transcend limitations of a monolingual framework, previously unquestioned, previously unchallenged, previously accepted as adequate, as sufficient, as complete. Melania's social media accounts gained hundreds of thousands of followers within hours. Her mentions filled not just with supporter praise, but with multilingual messages from across the cultural spectrum, linguistic spectrum, political spectrum, acknowledging virtuosity, performance, revelation that transcended partisan framing, that elevated beyond controversy, that transformed beyond the artificial constraints of manufactured conflict. Back in the production van outside the Plaza Hotel, Jacob watched Matthew's attempt recovery, attempt processing, attempt integration of what had occurred, what had unfolded, what had transformed planned provocation into something entirely different, entirely unexpected, entirely beyond producer control, beyond host direction, beyond network capacity to predict, to shape, to integrate into the existing framework of performance, of content creation, of controversy manufacturing. "This changes everything," she finally whispered, her voice hollow, her eyes vacant. Her professional identity, career trajectory, brand reputation suddenly confronting existential challenge, suddenly facing fundamental questioning, suddenly encountering reality beyond performance, beyond provocation, beyond the artificial constructs of controversy manufacturing previously defining approach, tactics, strategy in pursuit of engagement. Network phones rang continuously now, language experts reaching out, offering analysis, offering context, offering insight into the demonstration, into the performance, into the revelation that had transformed a provocative interview into a linguistic showcase, into multilingual virtuosity, into a global perspective transcending monolingual limitations, transcending accent perception, transcending reductive understanding of intelligence, of sophistication, of capacity. Across digital platforms, engagement metrics continued climbing, continued expanding, continued revealing dimensions entirely unexpected, entirely unprecedented, entirely beyond algorithm prediction, beyond analytics modeling, beyond the quantifiable parameters previously determining the content value, engagement potential, viral capacity in the attention economy, in the digital landscape, in the contemporary media environment. Increasingly dependent on conflict, increasingly driven by provocation, increasingly measured by capacity to transform subject into content, into metrics, into professional currency, now revealed as fundamentally inadequate, as fundamentally flawed, as fundamentally limited in understanding of what genuinely engages, what genuinely connects, what genuinely generates response across platforms, across demographics, across boundaries previously perceived as fixed, as permanent, as unbridgeable. The segment that had been designed to create viral moments of controversy had indeed gone viral, but for reasons no one had anticipated, no one had planned, no one had believed possible. In the artificial landscape of media production, a public figure with multilingual fluency, with a global perspective, with linguistic capacity transcending monolingual limitations, had broken through the carefully constructed architecture of provocative journalism to remind everyone watching, everyone sharing, everyone responding, what genuine brilliance, what authentic sophistication, what meaningful exchange could manifest when performance gave way to reality, when provocation encountered capacity, when manufactured controversy transformed into revelatory demonstration beyond producer control, beyond host direction, beyond network capacity to predict, to shape, to integrate into the existing framework of understanding. In the production van, Matthews sat silently, still processing, still attempting integration, still confronting implications of what had occurred, what had unfolded, what had transformed career trajectory, professional identity, brand reputation, built through provocative interview, through manufactured controversy, through strategic disrespect designed to generate reaction, designed to create content, designed to produce engagement, now revealed as fundamentally inadequate, as fundamentally flawed, as fundamentally limited when confronting authentic response to deliberate provocation. Jacob's phone continued buzzing with messages from network executives, from the production team, from programming directors, all demanding explanation, all seeking understanding, all requiring integration of what had occurred, what had unfolded, what had transformed a planned broadcast into something entirely different, entirely unexpected, entirely beyond the framework previously informing content creation. "This wasn't supposed to happen," he muttered, staring at engagement metrics, at viewership numbers, at response statistics revealing dimensions entirely unprecedented, entirely unpredicted, entirely beyond analytics modeling, previously determining approach, tactics, strategy in pursuit of specific content, specific reaction, specific viral moment, now transformed beyond recognition. 3 days after the exchange, the ripples had become waves, crashing against established shores and reshaping the media landscape in ways no one had predicted. Diana Matthews sat in her Manhattan apartment, watching as the conversation continued beyond her control, beyond anyone's, taking on a life entirely its own. The Matthews Hours executive team had called an emergency weekend meeting, their entire format suddenly questioned, not just by viewers or critics, but by their own staff, their own producers, who had watched what happened when provocative journalism encountered multilingual brilliance, when manufactured controversy yielded to authentic demonstration. The clip had been viewed 100 million times across platforms, across demographics, transcending the usual media bubbles, reaching people who normally scrolled past anything related to political figures, interviews, or content they considered irrelevant, disconnected from their interests, their concerns, their engagement. Media analysts wrote lengthy pieces examining the unexpected phenomenon, the hunger for authentic demonstration that had been revealed in the response to those unscripted minutes when linguistic virtuosity shattered assumptions, revealed dimensions beyond the monolingual framework of understanding. Matthews herself had remained uncharacteristically silent, her usual social media presence suspended as she processed what had happened, what it meant for her approach, her brand, her entire career built on provocation. Harvard's linguistics department announced a special panel examining implications for communication, perception, and understanding of multilingual intelligence, of immigrant contribution, of linguistic capacity transcending accent limitations. Melania's previous books suddenly topped bestseller lists, not just among supporters, but expanding to demographics that normally avoided anything connected to political figures they opposed, anything associated with perspectives they rejected, anything labeled with categories they had been conditioned to dismiss. Her phone rang again. Another interview request, this time from a prestigious academic program, not to discuss politics, not to revisit controversy, but to explore multilingualism, global perspective, the cognitive benefits language acquisition provides beyond monolingual limitation, beyond accent perception, beyond the reductive understanding informing assumptions. 3 major networks had already announced format changes for their interview approaches, moving away from ambush, from provocation, from manufactured controversy toward a framework that prioritized substance, respected complexity, acknowledged dimensions beyond superficial perception, beyond immediate appearance, beyond the artificial constraints of reductive understanding. Jessica Nelson, a producer at a rival network, watched the changes with growing unease. "This is overreaction," she insisted in a staff meeting that had run 2 hours longer than scheduled as colleagues debated implications. People still want confrontation, still want reaction, still want public figures caught in unguarded moments. But the viewership data suggested otherwise, as audiences increasingly migrated toward content that offered substance, that respected complexity, that prioritized authenticity over manufactured moments. Linguistics professors added the segment to their course materials as an illustration of code switching, of multilingual fluency, of cognitive benefits language acquisition provides beyond accent perception, beyond the reductive understanding informing assumptions about intelligence, about sophistication, about capacity transcending linguistic barriers, cultural barriers, perceptual barriers. Language departments analyzed the segment's multiple exchanges, multiple transitions, the moment when monolingual limitation was exposed, was revealed, was transcended by demonstration of fluency, by performance of linguistic virtuosity, by revelation of capacity beyond superficial perception, beyond immediate appearance, beyond reductive understanding. The Matthews Hours ratings transformed, not declining as some had predicted, but shifting dramatically in composition, attracting viewers who had previously avoided political interviews, confrontational segments, finding nothing in manufactured controversy that warranted their attention, their engagement, their participation in constructed spectacle. Network executives across television revised assumptions about audience desires, about engagement metrics, about success measures as the cascade of response continued building, suggesting hunger for substance, for authenticity, for something beyond the hollow satisfaction of provocative journalism, of manufactured controversy, of deliberate disrespect designed to generate emotional reaction, exploitable content, viral moments. Media ethics panels convened discussions featuring journalists, critics, academics, industry professionals, all examining implications of what some were already calling the Melania moment, when monolingual assumption was exposed, was revealed, was transcended by multilingual brilliance, by global perspective, by cognitive capacity beyond reductive understanding. Young journalists, particularly women, reached out to industry mentors with questions about approaches, about frameworks, about the possibility of interviewing beyond provocation, beyond the artificial constraints of controversy manufacturing that had defined celebrity journalism for decades. Conservative media, which initially celebrated the moment as a victory over liberal bias, gradually shifted toward deeper analysis of what had actually happened, when provocation met brilliance, when xenophobia encountered multilingualism, when reductive understanding confronted global perspective beyond the artificial constraints of partisan framing. Progressive outlets, traditionally dismissive of anything associated with the Trump name, found themselves questioning assumptions about immigrant intelligence, about linguistic capacity, about the cognitive benefits multilingualism provides beyond accent perception, beyond the reductive understanding informing content creation. The network's digital team analyzed metrics from the broadcast and subsequent sharing, finding patterns that defied conventional wisdom about what drove engagement, what created connection, what audiences actually hungered for in media landscape, in attention economy, in a digital environment increasingly dependent on conflict, on provocation, on manufactured controversy. 3 competing networks had already extended interview invitations to Melania, not seeking controversy, not seeking conflict, not seeking manufactured moments, but something more substantial, more authentic, more aligned with what audiences had responded to, with such unprecedented engagement, such unexpected connection, such unpredicted participation across previously separate media ecosystems. Thomas Wilson, Matthews' executive producer, fielded calls from network executives seeking guidance on the program's willingness to evolve, to reconsider approach, to adapt methods to transform provocation into something more sustainable, more ethical, more valuable in media landscape, in attention economy, in a digital environment increasingly revealed as hungry for substance, for authenticity, for something beyond manufactured controversy. The Annenberg School announced a special session at their upcoming media festival, examining implications for interview approaches, for perception of accent, for understanding of linguistic capacity beyond monolingual framework of communication, of expression, of intelligence. Amy Patel, a viewer from Chicago who had watched the segment with her immigrant parents, found themselves discussing multilingualism, their shared linguistic heritage, their cultural connection to languages previously hidden, previously minimized, previously treated as limitation rather than asset in American context, in professional environment, in social landscape prioritizing monolingual conformity. University linguistics departments reported sudden increased interest in courses examining multilingualism, language acquisition, immigrant experience, the relationship between linguistic capacity and cognitive flexibility in contemporary global environment, increasingly connected, increasingly integrated, increasingly dependent on cross-cultural communication, on transnational understanding, on perspectives transcending the artificial constraints of monolingual limitation. The segment had been translated into 26 languages, subtitled, shared across international borders, carrying implications beyond American media context to global questions about communication, about perception, about understanding of intelligence beyond accent. Media watchdog organizations noted subtle shifts in format and approach across television programming in days following: more substance, less ambush, more respect, less provocation, more complexity, less exploitation, as competitors scrambled to capture the unexpected audience hunger for something beyond performance. Matthews' production team spent hours reviewing past segments with new perspective, seeing patterns of manipulation, of disrespect, of exploitation previously invisible in the comfortable familiarity of formula, now revealed in harsh light of comparison to authentic demonstration they had witnessed, to linguistic virtuosity they had captured, to multilingual brilliance they had provoked through xenophobic implication, through deliberate disrespect, through a calculated attempt at manufacturing controversy now transformed into revelation, into demonstration, into performance, transcending the artificial constraints of provocative journalism, of controversy manufacturing, of content creation, previously defining approach. Immigrants with accents particularly found platforms previously unavailable, as media outlets recognized hunger for perspectives, normally filtered through hostile framing, dismissive introduction, reductive presentation designed to diminish rather than illuminate capacity, complexity, brilliance beyond superficial perception, beyond immediate appearance, beyond monolingual limitation. Language learning applications reported unprecedented surge in subscriptions, interest across demographic spectrum, professional spectrum, political spectrum, as people recognized limitations of monolingual framework of communication, of understanding, of perception, previously unchallenged, previously unquestioned, previously accepted as adequate, as sufficient, as complete. 1 month after the exchange that changed everything, Melania Trump stood at the podium of Columbia University's linguistics department, addressing a packed auditorium of students, professors, and media professionals gathered to discuss multilingualism, global perspective, and cognitive benefits of language acquisition beyond monolingual limitation. "I didn't walk into that interview planning to create a moment," she began, her voice clear, accent present, carrying the same authenticity that had broken through the carefully constructed performance of provocative journalism. "I simply responded authentically, from experience, from perspective, from capacity developed through global journey, through multicultural life, through linguistic acquisition transcending boundaries." The audience listened attentively, not with political division, not with cultural sorting, but with shared curiosity about what happened when xenophobia encountered multilingualism, when provincial perception confronted global perspective, when manufactured controversy transformed into authentic demonstration, into revelatory performance, into linguistic virtuosity transcending limitations. Across the media landscape, profound shifts had taken place. The Matthews Hour itself had undergone the most visible transformation, its format completely reimagined to prioritize substance over spectacle, respect over provocation, genuine exchange over manufactured conflict. Diana Matthews had taken several weeks off, returning with a public statement acknowledging the limitations, the emptiness, the ultimate futility of the approach that had built her career, her reputation. "I've been asking myself," she wrote, "whether I've been contributing to understanding or merely to division, whether I've been illuminating complexity or merely exploiting superficial perception, immediate appearance, provincial understanding of difference, of accent, of expression beyond monolingual framework." Her honesty, unexpected, uncharacteristic, had itself gone viral, generating response from colleagues, competitors, critics, all recognizing something important in her willingness to reconsider, to evolve, to acknowledge limitations of approaches previously unquestioned. The network's ratings had transformed, not diminished as some had predicted, but shifted dramatically in composition, attracting viewers who previously avoided political interviews, confrontational segments, finding nothing in manufactured controversy that warranted their attention, their engagement, their participation in constructed spectacle. Media competitors had followed suit, revising formats, approaches, assumptions about what audiences wanted, what engagement meant, what responsibility they bore to cultural discourse beyond simple provocation, beyond manufactured controversy, beyond the artificial constraints of reductive understanding previously informing content creation. Melania continued her address, sharing observations about what happened when multilingual voice broke through the artificial constraints of provincial perception. "I believe people are hungry for substance, for complexity, for authenticity," she said, "for conversations that acknowledge dimensions beyond superficial perception, for voices that speak from global experience rather than performing expected limitation, for exchanges that seek understanding rather than merely generating conflict." The audience nodded, some taking notes, some recording, some simply absorbing the possibility of communication beyond the familiar patterns of limitation. Columbia's linguistics department had created a new fellowship program examining the relationship between multilingualism and cognition, between immigrant experience and perception, between accent and understanding in contemporary media landscape increasingly global. Applications had flooded in from students across cultural spectrum, seeking to contribute to evolution of communication, understanding beyond provincial perception, beyond monolingual framework, previously limiting discourse. Language learning applications had expanded, creating accessibility initiatives, partnerships with educational institutions across the country, focused on building bridges across divides that normally separated communities, limited perspectives, prevented genuine connection beyond stereotypes. What I've learned, Melania reflected, is that communication isn't as limited as our media has portrayed. Our expressions differ, our accents vary, our linguistic capacities sometimes diverge, but beneath these differences lies shared capacity for complexity, for sophistication, for understanding that transcends artificial boundaries. Diana Matthews now appeared weekly in a completely reimagined format, featuring extended conversations with multilingual voices, focused not on generating controversy but understanding, not on exploiting difference but exploring complexity, not on provincializing perspective but discovering dimensions beyond monolingual framework. Her ratings initially dropped, then climbed, attracting viewers who found value in substance, in authenticity, in respect that had been absent from previous format. Nielsen data revealed surprising patterns as media programming across networks shifted toward substance, toward authenticity, toward genuine exchange, attracting audiences previously disengaged from interview formats, finding nothing of value in manufactured moments. Academic research confirmed what viewership suggested, that hunger for authentic dialogue, for meaningful exchange, for respectful engagement with linguistic complexity transcended political division was shared by audiences across demographic spectrum, who had simply abandoned media landscapes that offered only exploitation or stereotype. 3 major universities had created research initiatives examining implications for interview approaches, for media ethics, for understanding complexity beyond provocation, beyond the artificial constraints of format that had limited exchange for so long. What if we created media environments, Melania suggested, that rewarded substance, that prioritized understanding, that valued authentic voice over rehearsed performance, that acknowledged complexity of expression beyond simplistic cultural framing, that actually contributed to understanding rather than merely exploiting difference? When I stood in that ballroom, she reflected, responding to deliberate provocation, refusing to react, refusing to perform the expected role in manufactured controversy, I wasn't thinking about changing media landscape. I was simply being authentic to my experience, to my capacity, to my perspective as someone navigating multiple linguistic worlds. The moment had inspired immigrants with accents, particularly women, to claim voice, to demand hearing, to break through the dismissive framing, the xenophobic implication, the performative contexts designed to diminish rather than illuminate capacities, to reduce rather than reveal complexities, to limit rather than liberate expressions. But more significantly, it had inspired media executives, producers, hosts to reconsider fundamental assumptions about interview approaches, about audience desires, about their own responsibility to cultural discourse beyond ratings, beyond relevance, beyond formula. We have opportunity now, Melania concluded, to transform how we understand communication, how we perceive accent, how we recognize intelligence beyond provincial limitation, beyond xenophobic implication, beyond monolingual framework previously constraining discourse. The audience rose in standing ovation, not with partisan enthusiasm, not with cultural sorting, but with shared recognition of possibility when multilingualism breaks through limitation, when substance replaces spectacle, when understanding outweighs provocation. Her words resonated beyond auditorium walls, beyond Columbia, beyond New York, to living rooms and classrooms and boardrooms, where audiences had witnessed possibility of media that actually illuminated rather than merely provoked, that actually contributed to understanding rather than merely confirming the comfortable certainties of provincial perception. Diana Matthews watched the live stream from her office, considering implications for her own evolution, her own contribution to media landscape beyond provocation, beyond the hollow satisfaction of controversy, towards something more meaningful, more valuable, more aligned with genuine human connection. Melania's social media filled with messages from across cultural spectrum, acknowledging the impact of that moment, the possibility it revealed, the hunger it exposed for something beyond manufactured controversy, for something authentic, substantial, respectful in media discourse across divides. Across America, similar conversations unfolded as performance yielded, however briefly, to possibility, as stereotype gave way to curiosity, as provocation surrendered to connection, revealing hunger for authentic exchange that transcended political division, that offered hope for discourse beyond exploitation. If this story moved you, if it made you reconsider how we perceive accent, how we understand intelligence, how we recognize capacity beyond provincial limitation, beyond xenophobic implication, beyond monolingual framework previously constraining perception, share it, because sometimes transformation begins not with grand declarations, not with format changes, not with institutional reform, but with simple demonstration of authenticity, of capacity, of perspective from experience beyond limitation. Subscribe for more stories that illuminate possibilities when we dare to break through the artificial constraints of provincial perception, when we insist on authenticity, when we prioritize understanding over provocation, when we finally start recognizing capacities beyond accent, beyond appearance, beyond the limitations we've accepted as inevitable, as permanent, as unbridgeable, when in reality they may be more constructed, more artificial, more permeable than we ever imagined.